Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the money in your pocket doesn't actually belong to you. Not because it was stolen, not because the economy collapsed overnight, but because it was never truly yours in the first place. You've worked for it. You've traded years of your life for it. Yet somehow, every year, it buys you less freedom, not more. Here's the mystery that almost no one asks. How did currency, a tool invented to make people free to trade, quietly become a system that controls entire nations? And more unsettling still, when did freedom slowly transform into debt without most people noticing? Setting the stage, money was never meant to do this. For most of human history, money was simple. It was a record, a placeholder for value, a way to make trade easier than bartering goats for grain, gold, silver, salt, shells. Money represented something real. If you held a coin, it had weight. If a ruler debased it, people noticed immediately. If a kingdom overspent, it ran out of metal and power faded. Money had limits, and those limits acted as a brake on control. But those limits were also inconvenient, because as empires grew, wars became expensive, and kings discovered something dangerous. The biggest obstacle to power was honest money, so the search began for a system where spending would no longer require permission from reality. That search would change everything. Origins, the first shift from value to promise. The first major turning point didn't begin with banks. It began with trust. Goldsmiths in medieval Europe stored gold for merchants and issued paper receipts. At first, those receipts were honest. Each one matched real gold in a vault. But over time, something subtle happened. Goldsmiths realized that not everyone came to claim their gold at once, so they issued more receipts than gold they actually held. Nothing collapsed. Trade increased. The system appeared to work. And in that moment, a new idea was born. Money didn't need to be valued, it just needed to be believed. The rise, when states and banks merged, this was the birth of fractional reserve banking, a system where money was no longer created by mining or labor, but by lending promises into existence. Debt became the source of money itself. At first, rulers resisted this system, until they realized its true power. Wars could now be financed without immediate taxation. Palaces could be built without raising gold. Empires could expand without asking citizens for consent. All they needed was debt. Central banks emerged not as public institutions, but as private partners to governments. The deal was simple. Banks create money through loans. Governments borrow it. Citizens repay it through taxes and inflation. The cost was hidden. The pain was delayed. And that delay changed politics forever. The key turning point: money breaks from reality. For a while, gold still anchored the system. Currencies were promises, but promises to pay gold. That final constraint vanished in the 20th century. In 1971, the US officially ended the gold standard. From that moment on, money became pure fiat, value by decree. No backing, no limit, no natural stopping point. Currency was no longer tied to scarcity. It was tied to policy. And policy is controlled by those closest to power. Money had become a lever. The mechanism, how control replaced freedom. Here's the part most people never see. In a debt-based system, money is created as loans. Loans require repayment with interest, but the interest is never created, which means there is always more debt than money. Someone must always lose. Someone must default. Someone must surrender assets. Someone must work longer. This is not a flaw. It's the engine. Inflation becomes a silent tax. Savings erode without legislation. Wages chase prices but never catch up. The breaking point, when debt became the goal. Originally, debt was a tool. Now, it is the product. Student loans, mortgages, credit cards, national debt. Entire economies are measured not by well-being, but by growth rates, which require more borrowing. Governments can no longer shrink debt without collapsing markets. Citizens cannot stop working without losing access to basic life. Freedom becomes conditional. The fallout, who really benefits? This system does not enrich everyone equally. Those closest to money creation, banks, financial institutions, asset holders, they benefit first. New money flows into assets before prices rise. By the time it reaches wages, purchasing power has already fallen. This is why inequality widens even when economies grow. Failed fixes, WHY reforms never last. Every crisis brings promises of reform. More regulation, new oversight, better transparency. But the structure remains untouched. So instead of fixing the engine, we add fuel, bailouts, stimulus, quantitative easing. Each solution buys time. Each one deepens dependency. Modern parallels, the pattern repeats. Look around today. Record global debt, rising cost of living, declining trust in institutions, digital currencies promising efficiency. The language has changed, the logic hasn't. Digital money doesn't remove control, it refines it. The reveal: this was never about money. At its core, this is not a financial story, it's a power story. Who decides when money is created? Who gets it first? Who pays the cost later? Currency didn't fail, it succeeded at something new. Final warning: the question that remains: if money now decides how much of your future you're allowed to access, if work no longer guarantees stability, if debt is no longer optional, then the real question isn't how much money you have. It's who controls the system that creates it. Call to action: if this story changed how you see money, share it with someone who still believes the system is neutral. Subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of power, currency, and control. Because once you see the system clearly, you can never unsee it.